Okay, so since the last one, I have been fiddling around with the settings a little more, and I've reduced the grain as much as I possibly can, I think, and I've also upped the colour vibrancy a little bit, so hopefully graphically things will be looking a little better in the final version, so I'm making progress on that at the very least. And also this is a Horton's scenario, so this is a very large battle, and so it might be a good chance to sort of see how well the graphics mod holds up under real scrutiny, because obviously Horton scenarios tend to be very, very large in the scope. Although there aren't 5 orc armies for the game to tear itself apart over, there is only 4 this time. Only 4 enormous armies. Still, and also, like in the last battle that I recorded and posted, I was complaining about how difficult it was to cam through the trees. So what better place to go from there but Mirkwood, which is even more difficult to cam through the trees on. Nonetheless, we'll go through the army compositions and then go through the battle itself. I wasn't a part of this one, unfortunately. I wasn't able to make it, so I don't actually know how this is going to turn out. But nonetheless, it is 3 Elven armies against 3 Orc armies, so of course we are in Mirkwood, and we shall start off with the High Elves played by Horton himself. So let's go through this composition first of all, and he's of course got some Falas Lords. I expect most of the Elven armies to be very elite, because of course they are outnumbered. There's some more Falas Lords looking very shiny in the sunlight. Maybe I should reduce the shine a little bit. The Smiths of Eregion, of course, very good armour-piercing infantry. And then back here in the shadow, we have the Noldor Elder Nobles. Again, all of the High Elven best units are going to be on display. We have some Smiths of Eregion who are also hiding, and also some Storm Raiders. Imladris Storm Raiders will get considerably better in the next patch. I can't wait for the next patch, actually. There's going to be... Although actually I think the next patch is going to be delayed slightly more, simply because I think they are actually going to add Linden. So I think Linden and Rudal might be a part of it, at least based on the Discord with all the new unit models for Linden they've been posting. I assume that they're going to add Linden in the next patch. Maybe I'm wrong in that assumption. We've got the Imladris Stormguard, of course, not necessarily the most picked unit of the High Elves, because the Mythalon Nobles exist, but we'll see how they do. We also have the Elder Enway Archers, armour piercing for the time being, but that won't last, I don't think. Of course, the timestamp for the battle starting and the links to the mod DB in the Discord will be in the description below, as always. Elder Enway Swordsmen as well, slightly more effective than the Storm Raiders, at least in terms of cost efficiency in this patch, but that will change in the next patch. They will have very different purposes to how they are meant to be played with. And then we have the Imladris Cavalry, of course, standard shot cavalry, not the most durable anymore, but still relatively useful to be used on the offense. And then we have the Mythalon Nobles, very good mid-tier Elven units, of course. For most factions that would be high tier. More Elder Enway Swordsmen. Then over here he's got the very effective Imladris Guards, very difficult to be forced through, and they're backing up a unit of Elder Enway Spearmen. Look at that. That is a front line you really don't want to be going through if you can help it. You really want to be trying to skirmish them down. Some Noratirno Warriors, of course, the more lightly armoured Elven Archers. Still very effective though. Very long range missiles all of the High Elven units have, even the Bow Quindi. And we have, these are the Elder Enway Swordsmen again, more Imladris Guards and more Elder Enway Archers. So yeah, for the most part Horton has got a very elite looking army. There's also some Elder Enway Spearmen, more Elder Enway Spears there. Then looking forward to one of his allies, we have Glowbox playing as the Woodland Realms. Glowbox is he's a very good player in his own right, but he tends to play the Woodland Realms a lot, which kind of amplifies how good he is, which is unfortunate for those who face him most of the time. Then we have we have his army composition. I must apologise, I'm getting a bit of a cold, so if I'm croaky and sniffly, I can only apologise. I hope it does pass over very quickly. We have the Elder Royal Council, which I assume is his general unit. Yes, it is. There's Thranduil. And the Elder Royal Council, of course, one of the most effective archer units. Very similar in many ways to the Noldor Elder Nobles, although they are slightly more focused around how good they are at range rather than how good they are in melee. Then we have the Avari Elder Pikemen again, maybe not quite as good as the Imladris Guards, but they are still very, very efficient at what they do. He's got some Elder Palace Guard as well. In terms of a single infantry unit, probably the most deadly that there is on the field in the current patch. They aren't necessarily the most armoured, so in that respect the Temple Inquisitors probably beat them, but when they're up close and personal where they're supposed to be, the Palace Guard are the best. And they also have some Hir Lang right here, another very effective heavy swordsman unit. And then, very similar to the Elder Enway Swordsman in many respects, only perhaps a little bit more focused around skill than armour. Back here we have the Elder Royal Guard, another one of the Woodland Realms' very effective archer units. And then over here we have the Hir Ek, again very similar to the Elder Enway Spears. All the Elven factions have got the same sort of base, they're just sort of effective in slightly different ways. and then the Here Bang. I do love the Here units for their style. Again, like I've said before, the Hobbit movies may have done a few things wrong, but I do think that the style of the Woodland Realms armour is one thing they got quite, they did that quite well. Here Dirith, of course, sword and shield unit, similar to the Mithlond nobles in many ways. Then the Here Bang, of course. He's sort of laid out his army in sort of low tier up to high tier. So he's got the Forest Wardens down this end with the more Here Lang and then more Here Bang in the back. So he's got a very elite army all around, and then I believe, where's his cavalry gone? I know he had cavalry, I saw them, here they are. So he's got the Elder King, oh my god, the Elder Kingsguard, fuck the Kingsguard. Seriously, these guys are, as it stands, grossly overpowered in my opinion. They're very fast and they don't die very easily, even under sustained arrow fire, which you would expect to kill them quickly because they have 3 hit points, they don't fall. However, their counterparts, the Elder Pathfinders, do at least. The Pathfinders are much more reasonable, I think. They are still potentially very, very devastating, but they are at least killable, whereas the Elder Kingsguard, much less so. And then we have the central position over here, played by Donald Kingslayer. He's playing as Lothlorien. Lothlorien as well will receive a few changes in the upcoming patch, as will most factions, but they are getting the addition of a very nice pike unit, which is one of the most significant additions to them. He's got Sylvan Heavy Spearmen at the front. Again, these guys are not quite as good as the the Here en Ek, I think the Spearman unit is. I've forgotten already, and the Elder Enway Spearmen, because they don't have hit points. You can, however, have 3 before the cost increases, so they do have that going for them. Several units of them. Try and go through this army composition a little bit quicker. I'm wasting a bit of time here. So we've got the Sylvan Heavy Archers as well. Very good arch unit again. Lothlorien, a little bit more focused around movement traditionally, but they are rather isolated. You can see their position here on the map. They're going to have to sort of hold this sort of central ground here. He's got some more Sylvan Heavy Archers over here, and then going through these ruins. I think I have got the graphics down pretty good now. Like the rest I can do only with my render settings, so we'll see how well that goes. He's got some Sylvan Silver Spears over here, very shiny as well. Again, they don't have the armor upgrade. Actually no, they don't get a different look when they upgrade, do they? So they probably do have the armor upgrade actually. In Horton scenarios, most of the defending units tend to have all of their upgrades to the max, really. For the most part, anyway. So Sylvan Silver Spears here as well. So Lothlorien's army is looking pretty good. He's got Sindar Archers as well. Then more Sylvan Heavy Swordsmen. Sylvan Heavy Spearmen. The Galadrim Mounted Company. So again, the Lothlorien cavalry is exceptionally fast, but it's not as durable as their Elven counterparts. And he's got Sylvan Heavy Spearmen and Sylvan Axemen. I wonder if he's got the Galadrim Veteran Warriors anywhere. Can't see them. They have a very distinctive golden hue to their armour, and it doesn't look like they are here. At least, well, they're probably hiding, to be fair. So, now we shall move on to the Orc armies. I'm trying to sort of ration my voice out as much as I possibly can before it goes completely. I'll try and go through the Orc armies a little bit faster, because chances are they're going to be quite similar in nature. We have Stewed Fungus playing as Mordor, so he has Uruks, of course. Several units of Uruks, and then he's got Uruk Halberds, Morannon units as well. He's got Sauron's Will mixed in there as well. Heavy Maulers. The Heavy Maulers not likely to be quite as effective against Lothlorien. He's probably going to want to save them because, of course, armour is not really the Elves, other than the High Elves. The Woodland Realms and the Lothlorien don't really rely on their armour all that much. Morannon bows, a very effective bow unit for Mordor in this patch. Then the Olag High. He's also got some cavalry, mounted Númenórean Shield Guard, and he's got the Melkor's Chosen, so the Elven Cav is not going to have it all its own way, particularly with that Melkor's Chosen around, and also Temple Inquisitors and Númenórean Shield Guard. The Temple Inquisitors, very, very effective infantry unit again. I'm a very big fan of the Temple Inquisitors in this patch. And then we got the Morannon Uruks and Temple Guard mixed in there as well. So, because there is only 4 Orc armies, they're allowed a little bit more of their elite stuff. Especially when they're up against 3 very elite Elven armies, they're going to need it. Then we've got Mech playing as the Orcs of the Misty Mountains. Of course, another name that's cropped up quite a lot in my vids recently. He's got Mountain Uruk Pikes. The Pikemen are going to be very necessary to try and break through the lines. They're going to have to follow up the initial assault very quickly if they're going to hold their ground. Then over here he's got the Bolgs Champions again, more elite cav. He's got the Blackwatch Legion here as well. Going to be very effective at breaking through any defensive positions in shield wall. They're bulldozers of a unit, the Blackwatch Legion. Very, very good unit indeed. He's got Mountain Uruk Blades again, not a terrible mainline infantry unit. Against most of the elite Elven units it might seem that way, but they are actually pretty decent. Much better than the standard heavy goblins anyway. Speaking of which, there's some heavy goblin infantry back here. You know, they have got decent armour, but against the elves it's not really going to matter because their archers are so good. Then back here we've got some black Uruks of the mountains, slightly more shock-focused infantry, heavy goblin crossbows as well. If they get into position, they're going to wreak havoc among the elven ranks. Orc bodyguards, surprisingly good unit, not to be mistaken with the heavy goblin infantry. And then we've got some Black Uruk warband back here, and some snow trolls. So a pretty decent force from the Misty Mountains. Again, they're slightly more foddery, but again, that's to be expected. I mean, they're going to be having to take Lothlorien head on, but with their numbers, they should still fare okay, at least against one elven army. Over here we've got Outfit. That's a relatively new name. I don't think I've ever played with Outfit before. But he's playing as the Orcs of Gundabad. We've got some Black Uruks. We've also got some Orc Marauders. I doubt that Gundabad have got all of their high tier stuff. Again, they have got a very nice selection of high tier units, normally anyway. We've got some Orc Fellas as well, some shock focused infantry. More Marauders. A lot of Gundabad's armour piercing will be sort of wasted on the Elves, but if they can save it for the High Elves at the end, but again, most of these are low tier units, so they're going to be committed early. He's also got some wargs, so again, the cav action is going to be real. Oh, excuse me. And then we've got some Guardians of Khan Doom. So again, we do have the elite core of Gundabad back here, along with more wargs. And what is this I spy over here? We have the Witches in play. So when they loose their payload, I'm going to try and stay as far away from them as possible so as not to crash the game. There's stakes over here, which I can only assume means hidden goblins. Gundabad Guard, Witch Realm Pikemen. So again, this is definitely the elite core. We've got more bulked champions from Gundabad back here. And then we have the Witch Realm Blackguard, I presume, as the General's unit. Again, very effective. Not quite as good as the Temple Inquisitors in my experience, but still pretty darn close. And Praise doesn't get higher than that. And there's also some Trolls back here. And then the final army we have over here, played by WK. We have Mordor. Again, lots of fodder. Poor WK, he's right in the range of that Woodland Realms cavalry. I want to see how he deals with this. So again, lots of fodder. There's also Orc Archers, I believe, in there. There's also some Uruk Halberds. Halberds are not quite as good against cavalry as you might expect, so I want to see how well this goes. Also, Orc Raiders, definitely looking like the most foddery army of the Orcs here. Again, Moranon units slightly better. Some Olag High at least, so provided they don't get charged, they might be able to do something against that Woodland Realms cav. Then we've got some Uruk Bodyguard over here, and I presume he's got some hidden units as well, because he is quite close to the forest. So I think now might be the time to start. We shall see how well the frame rate holds up under real scrutiny here. Again, I did say initially when I downloaded this sort of reshader, or Sweet FX as it's called, it did actually seem to improve the frame rate in normal battles, but here that might be asking a bit much of it. Anyway, Glowbox is forming up his cavalry to charge into WK's ranks. WK can only really, based on his composition that I saw, can only really hope to do as much damage to the Woodland Realms as possible, while Lothlorien get crushed on all sides by the other Orcish armies. We shall see. Based on how these armies are composed, I would place the advantage squarely in the Elves' favour. But we shall see, and again we have these Elder Pathfinders charging into these Moranon Uruks. They are in loose though, so they won't get quite as much damage done as they would have if they were in solid formation. Those King's Guard are there as well. It's hard to see what WK can really do against this level of cavalry. These Olag High, getting a few kills on the retreating Pathfinders, but this Elder King's Guard charging into this very densely packed formation of Orcs. Again, keeping an eye on the map over there, the Galadrim Mounted Company seem to be making their moves. We shall see what's going on through the trees. Yeah, those Pathfinders, they took a few losses at the hands of the Olag High, but not all that many. And again, we can see these Elder Kingsguard burrowing deeply into the Orcish lines. The Orc Raiders and the the Uruk Halberdiers are going to take a few losses, but then, you know, as time wears on, attrition will start to tell on this Woodland Realms cavalry, particularly the Pathfinders. The Pathfinders do have a little bit of a survivability discrepancy against most cav with hit points, but the Kingsguard certainly do not. As we see the Halberdiers pushing forward. Again, in sustained melee they will start to bite in a little more on this Woodland Realms cav, but still, let's go back over to here, shall we? We can see the Outfit is starting to move up his Marauders onto this front line of Elves. Again, this Elven spear wall is going to hold very firmly against Orc Marauders. They're going to need to get up some more men into melee pretty quickly. Any ranged capabilities they have are going to be necessary. Again, Lothlorien are going to hold pretty easily against this sort of pressure. They're going to need to Gundabad and the Misty Mountains are going to need to support. No, well, I say Mordor and the Misty Mountains are going to have to support very, very quickly in order for this offensive to be effective in any in any way, shape, or form. Lothlorien really need to be crushed underfoot very quickly for this battle to go well for the attacking armies, I think. Again, we have here the Woodland Realms cavalry of Glowbox is still charging into WK's ranks, although we do have the Warg Riders of Outfit who have come over to support, which is a very good move, because they do need to deal with this Woodland Realms cav, if they want WK's support later on in the battle anyway. WK could try and hold off the Woodland Realms for as long as possible, but it's not going to go too well. We go in here, the Elder Kingsguard. They've taken minimal losses. There are Morgul chosen in here. Again, slightly more well equipped to deal with this, if only because they will survive under the charges a little better, but not all that much. Again, WK's army is the weakest of the Orc armies. Even the Misty Mountains, based purely on position, you know, WK drew the short straw here. Although we do have the Bolgs Champions here. The Bolgs Champions actually getting into the Elder Kingsguard. The Elder Kingsguard without managing to get a counter charge off. The Bolgs Champions, now being backed up by standard Warg Riders, should be victorious provided they stay in prolonged melee, although now the Pathfinders are coming in to back them up, so now the balance of power will start to shift back in the Elder Kingsguard favour, but they will start to take a few losses with these Bolgs Champions around. The Bolgs Champions will lose to the Elder Kingsguard, but just managing to thin out the ranks of this cavalry means they are doing their job. More Warg Riders coming in as well. So now the Woodland Realms cav is starting to be zoned out a little more effectively, but Glowbox, as I've said, is a very, very proficient player, and with the Woodland Realms his capabilities only increase. So let's go back over to here, where Medj is starting to make his move with the Orcs of the Misty Mountains. The Galadrim Mounted Company has been charging into his Mountaineer at Blades, trying to sort of run interference on his advance. But if we look over here, the Mountaineer at Blades are also starting to attack the Sylvan Heavy Spearmen. And over there we can see that Mounted Númenórean Shield Guard are going to rear-charge that Galadrim Mounted Company. With the Wargs in the background, this Galadrim Mounted Company is probably going to fall by the wayside now. Although they are fast enough that they could try and get away. But if these Wargs are microed, and if this Mounted Númenórean Shield Guard is microed, they will be not long for this world. But if we look over here, Medj has actually done the right thing here in trying to engage the Spearmen only, because the Sylvan Axemen, of course, are armor-piercing. And most standard Orc infantry, they get all of their survivability from their armour. So he's trying to go for the spears, which will get their killing done much more slowly. And over here we can see that the Orcs of Gundabad, the Marauders, are leading the way. I mean, they're not going to get too much done on these spearmen, but again, the attrition will tell, more so on Lothlorien than it would on the High Elves. We shall see. There are Woodland Warriors in the background here that we missed initially. And again, we've got Gundabad Guard in the background there, backed up by Halberdiers. The Gundabad Guard will go toe-to-toe with the Sylvan Heavies a little bit more effectively. Let's go back over to here, shall we? Back under the cover of the trees. We can see these Warg Riders balance the forces as evenly matched with the Pathfinders. Again, Pathfinders, their slight deficiency in survivability next to the Kingsguard is starting to show here. Again, they're under arrow fire and they're being attacked by Wargs, so they will fall. And also now they're at Olag High, what's left of the Olag High anyway. Actually, the Olag High didn't seem to take any charges, so they're still fine. They'll do just fine. And it does look like, for the most part anyway, let's see, is this the Kingsguard? Yes, it is. So it does seem that Glowbox's cavalry has been dealt with for the most part. There's still that unit of Kingsguard and that Pathfinders. Most of them, if you see the bodies here, WK's army still seems to be largely intact as well, so he dealt with it quite well. There's some spikes there. It looks like the Wargs ran through the spikes, unfortunately. Now these Kingsguard have changed their target, it seems, to the Orcs of Gundabad of Outfit. Outfit has decided to engage multiple fronts, which is a good idea under most circumstances, but unfortunately with the Kingsguard here, if they keep running rear charges off on his units, again, you saw that was a very healthy unit of Black Uruks that got scythed down in a single charge, and there's only 18 of them. The Elder Kingsguard in the current patch might be the strong... Well, they have I think probably the Knights for Numenus and the Kalanador Knights are both better. The Knights of Enumena certainly because you can have 2 before the cost increases, and they have more armour. And the Calanardon Knights simply because they are so good. But I think the Elder Kingsguard, all in all, might be one of the strongest cav units. Well, might be. They are. But I would put them in a solid 3rd place. I can't think of anything that would be higher than them there. Possibly the White Knights, but I'm not sure about that either. And here we can see that the Sylvan Silver Spears will hold the line here. We can see that there is... Well, the Orc Marauders are sort of turning around, I think, trying to get a counter charge off with the Black Urks to try and pen in the Elder Kingsguard. But on their own, the Orc fellas don't stand a chance against the Sylvan Silver Spears and will probably rout. Let's have a look at the other fronts. And over here, outfit is... Well, now I think with the Gundabad Guard in there, they're starting to make a few more inroads. But with the Sylvan Axemen just behind, they're not going to break through in this assault. Meanwhile, on this front, the Orcs of the Misty Mountains, they are engaging the Sylvan Axemen at least with these heavy Goblin infantry. They're trying to focus on these Sylvan heavy spearmen. They're going to need a little bit more assistance, I think. Maybe if Mordor commits a few forces just to help them out. Because, well, there's Mountain Orc Berserkers coming in, but they're not really making much progress on these front lines. Again, it's not too surprising considering the overall sort of strength that Lothlorien deployed here at the front. Meanwhile, I notice a blue triangle over here, which I can only assume is the Elder Kingsguard. And indeed it is. Glowbox charging into the Guardians of Khan Dûn. This is not a unit outfit can really afford to lose. And again, the Elder Kingsguard not losing a single unit, although they have lost a few more units since last we saw them, but the Elder Kingsguard, they always seem to pay for themselves so easily. They always seem to get 1,000 odd kills every time I see them. Medges, Bolgs Champions and Outfits, Bolgs Champions sort of consolidating their strength. If they can get into melee against those Elder Kingsguard, they should be enough to finish them off. The Elder Kingsguard are going to cycle charge over there. Meanwhile, over here we can see Outfit is recommitting his Orc Marauders to this front line. We'll see how well that goes. Glowbox has fallen back his main army. We can see on the map there to Horton's position. So Donald Kingslayer is going to be the only player sort of further forward here on this sort of raised ground. So eventually he will be defeated, but it's going to be at what cost? These Elder Pathfinders are still alive as well, rear-charging those Orc Marauders, getting a decent amount of kills. Glowbox's cavalry. The Woodland Realms cavalry is extremely effective. I believe that's one of the areas in which they're getting nerfed next patch. I believe the archery is where their main focus is supposed to lie. Let's have a look here. You can see that the Mounted Numenorean Shield Guard, they're doing their best to try and get those Elder Kingsguard, and indeed they have. Only 3 of them left, so finally they were able to be felled. Back here it's looking like the Misty Mountains is really starting to commit more men, which is good to see. Underground Goblins ready to sort of reinforce the line if it starts to falter, and it is going to falter against the Sylvan Axemen. Again, this is the armour upgraded version of the Sylvan Axemen. If you're wondering why the unit model looks much cooler than the standard one, that is why. Again, the archers are starting to... What sort of archers is he employing? So he's got Mountain Uruk archers, so they're not terrible, although it looks like they just ran out of ammunition. Mountain Uruk archers are not bad. They're not quite as good as Moran on bows, but you know, they can do it. They can do a decent job. Mountain Orc Berserkers, slightly more offensive focused infantry, trying to get in here. Unfortunately, Sylvan heavy archers that are out of ammo are going to be reinforcing the line. And again, Elven archers that are out of ammo, very, very efficient in melee as well, particularly the highest tier of archers. We'll see how well this goes, but now, with the Woodland Realms largely dealt with and their cavalry largely gone, WK's army is free to join in the assault on Donald Kingslayer's position, and indeed he is. It looks like, well, actually, he's sort of forming up a front line over here. So I think maybe he's going to save some of his units for the final assault, which is, you know, not a bad idea. If Gundabad and the Misty Mountains are the ones focused on Lothlorien, the 2 Mordor armies can then focus on the final position, but that final position with an entire High Elf stack and most of a Woodland Realms infantry stack is going to be very difficult to break through. So Lothlorien's job really is just to try and weaken the Orcs as much as possible, which we shall see. I mean, if we look here, the percentage of enemy, they're 19% ahead, the Elves. We shall see if, again, it's going to be the late game where that gap closes in a little bit more significantly. Sylvan Silver Spears, it's possible that Mordor are going to try and sort of flank around as well. More Sylvan heavy archers, they're out of ammunition. And over here we can see that the Misty Mountains are really making a big push. They've committed their Snow Trolls. The Snow Trolls are a very Obviously they're going to try and shock their way through with the Mountain Orc Berserkers and the Snow Trolls. That's a lot of attack. Oh, and that's the Galadriel Veteran Warriors, so they were indeed on the field. I expected as much. With their incandescent golden armour. Again, they're very effective in melee, and they will be sufficient to kill the Snow Trolls, but what was left of the Sylvan Axemen and those Sylvan Heavy Archers will take a lot of losses to the Snow Trolls. There are still, well, they had ammunition.
Badly bloodied. They have lost half their men.
So one of the Orc armies has lost half their men. I'm not sure whose that would be. Underground Goblins have been committed. Over here we have Orc Halberdiers in the fight, and now victory is starting to seem certain for the Orcs of Gundabad. The Witch Realm Scourge Raiders as well, without any archers to answer their advance. The Scourge Raiders are going to be able to get into melee, and with their high attack score, there's also Guardians of Khan Doom in here, so yeah, there's a real big push from the Misty Mountains and Gundabad now. And I don't think Lothlorien has too much of an answer for it. I mean, over here they've been victorious, but just the fact that they've had to commit forces to hold these fronts, it means that on certain fronts they haven't been able to deal with the big advances. And Sylvan Heavy Archers, while they may be good in melee, they aren't going to be good enough to deal with Guardians of Khan Doom. Definitely a very effective infantry unit indeed. And over here we have the Misty Mountains. Again, over here the Misty Mountains are going to have a bit of a tougher job, simply because the Galadriel Veteran Warriors, of all of the Lothlorien infantry units, they are the most effective, despite being an archer unit. So the Misty Mountains will probably lose a few more units, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, just the fact that they've pushed, it's been an effective advance. They coordinated themselves well, it seems. And Stewed Fungus's army, that Mordor army, is looking very, very healthy indeed. If we look here, the Sylvan Spearmen, or the Sylvan Heavy Spearmen, trying their best to hold with the Woodland Warriors in tow, but again, there's pikemen coming in, so this is where they're going to break through first of all. Gundabad with their very large, hefty push, and again, when Lothlorien ran out of archers, Gundabad did a very wise thing in advancing. And now we have WK Mordor with his Orc fodder flanking around. These Sylvan Heavy Swordsmen are going to have to be committed to deal with the fodder, and they will win, but just the fact that they're being occupied means they won't be able to reinforce their positions, and Lothlorien is going to be crushed like a paper bag here at this rate. I mean, it remains to be seen. I mean, WK has also set up a position here so that the Elves can't escape any of their forces to go to the final defence, as it were. But yeah, this is very well done. I'm a little surprised actually that the Woodland Realms, unless maybe this was a rule that the Woodland Realms weren't allowed to attack WK's army, because WK could have been in real trouble if the cavalry and the Woodland Realms infantry and archers pushed on him. And as it were, the Woodland Realms took a defensive stance. Ooh, and now the cavalry, mounted Númenórean Shield Guard, charging into those Woodland Warriors. This is going to be the end for this flank. The pikemen are at the front, so Gundabad are going to break through. Over here, I would suggest that the mounted Númenórean Shield Guard charge into the backs of these Galadriel Veteran Warriors, just to spare a few more of the Misty Mountains units for the final assault. Doesn't look like they're too keen though. I mean, now the chance is gone, because the Galadriel Veteran Warriors are going to try and countercharge. And indeed, Stewed Fungus is retreating his Númenórean Shield Guard. Some Sylvan Heavy Spearmen over there. I mean, they need to be careful, they're going to get boxed in. The Misty Mountains engaging a large front. What's this cavalry going to do? This cavalry is going to worm its way back out. The Sylvan Spearmen are going to try and engage, but well, they killed quite a few. I mean, the Shield Guard probably lost quite a few of their hit points engaging the Woodland Realms cavalry. It's not exactly a task that many cav units come out of unscathed. Orc Raiders, a unit of 91. They're going to recharge these. Oh, the Witch Realm Hammer Guard are in there as well, but they're mostly dead. So Gundabad have paid a pretty heavy price in forcing their way through, but things are looking a little bit more even now, I think. Lothlorien were dealt with quite efficiently when the Woodland Realms cavalry was finally dealt with, excuse me. Trying to avoid sneezing into the microphone, that would be most unfortunate. But yeah, this is going to be the end for Lothlorien. They're sort of trying to form up a defensive position where they can to sort of make it more difficult. Again, this position over here is actually relatively secure still, so they're still going to have to commit some forces to deal with this, but ultimately I mean, if you look over here, Gundabad is starting to pour in. The cavalry is starting to pour in. This front with the Misty Mountains is starting to look perilously thin. And when it comes to rear charges by wargs, again, those are Blackback Mountain Berserkers as well, the ideal unit to go after lightly armoured elves with. And now they're being rear charged by wargs and Numenorian Shield Guard. So this is going to be the end, although there is still a decent amount of the battle to go. And for a Horton scenario, there's remarkably little lag. My. I'm truly blessed. The Witch-Realm pikemen are going to sort of surround, it looks like. Again, these Sylvan Spearmen, they're trying their best, and again, Lothlorien, Elven factions in general will hold on for a good deal longer than most factions will. And over here we can see the Galadriel veteran warriors. We can see that the balance of forces is evenly matched despite the fact they're fully surrounded, and Moran Uruks are what is taking them on. Moran Uruks, of course. I believe the Moran units are actually being removed in the next patch, and they're going to be sort of used as the upgraded variant of the standard Uruks. Which again, I'm glad that they're going to be getting rid of some of the redundancy in the next patch, because again, some units there's really no point to picking them. Like the standard Uruks, if you can afford the Moran units, you're obviously going to go for them, because they're just so much more effective. And what is this? We have Temple Inquisitors from WK being committed to stamp out the Galadriel veterans once and for all, along with these Sylvan Heavy Spearmen. So yeah, this is overwhelming force is how the forces of evil have decided to deal with Lothlorien, and I'm glad they did, because that's the way to do it. Donald Kingslayer was really no match for 3 orc armies in this position. Over here he's still got a nice defensive position set up, but eventually the hammer will be brought down. Over here we can see that there are still Sylvan Heavy Spearmen, but with the addition of these pikemen from the rear and the Mountain Uruk Blades and the Blackback Mountain Berserkers from the front. This is the end. Sylvan Heavy Swordsmen. Lothlorien are certainly an acquired taste of a faction, but I do think they've got real merit. But robustness is probably not one of them, and being left out here as sort of the frontal defence, they were always going to be vulnerable to brute force, and so it has turned out to be. And if we look over here, the percentages are sort of widened a lot, so Lothlorien are still doing their job, but it remains to be seen. I think that this is... the amount of kills that Lothlorien get here is going to sort of decide the fight, because when it comes to the last stand of the Woodland Realms and the High Elves, we'll see if they have what it takes to sort of survive the onslaught. Because of course Stewed Fungus probably had the most elite of the armies, and his army is still in... well, he's untouched other than his Numenorian Shield Guard. And over here we have the Galadriel veterans with their last stand. The Temple Inquisitors, though, going to crush them underfoot. I'm still wondering how they're going to deal with this sort of position. We see WK sort of forming up bits of his army over here, ready to engage uphill against those Sylvan Silver Spears, who have gotten a lot of kills. There are only 80 of them left, but for a spear unit to get a lot of kills is a good result no matter what. WK with all of his fodder and raiders. He did good with the hand he was dealt. I mean, I thought he was going to get ridden down by Glowbox pretty quickly with that Woodland Realms cavalry, but fortunately he was able to sort of form up his ranks well enough, and he was also reinforced by his allies' wargs, which was certainly the way to go. Over here, these Galadriel veterans under most circumstances are very good infantry, but under this much pressure, unfortunately, they don't stand much of a chance. And now there's also pikemen coming in to rub salt into the wound. Mounted Numenorian Shield Guard hovering. This is it, the Misty Mountains have managed to punch through. The Misty Mountains and Gundabad took some pretty hefty losses, but they do still have some elites. I mean, Gundabad...
the enemy force remains.
Stuff like the Hammer Guard and the Gundabad Guard is looking pretty haggard at this point. But they do still have Guardians of Khan Doom in good health, they do still have their Trolls, and they do still have their Black Guard. Meanwhile, over here we can see the Orcs are now in... well, Donald Kingslayer, I think, has sort of charged out to try and deal with some of these more depleted units of lesser Orcs. And it is now looking like WK is going to sort of advance on his position. There's also Sindar Blade Masters over here. They won't go down without a fight. Heavy Goblin Crossbowmen, that's why he's charging forward. So these crossbowmen are going to try and shoot into the position over here, which is very understandable. If he gets them into the right position to shoot again, he just needs to retreat them a little bit and shoot them into the backs of the Sindar Blade Masters, and they will go down. And now these Sylvan Silver Spears are surrounded by Guardians of Karndoom and Uruk Bodyguard and Blackback Berserkers. Oh my word. Talk about overkill. These poor Sylvan Silver Spears. Again, Donald Kingslayer was the other one with a rather rough hand dealt to him. I mean, he was never gonna live to see the end of this battle, but again, to be crushed like a vice in between three relatively decent orc armies. I mean, WK's army had its flaws with all of its fodder and such, but the Misty Mountains and Gundabad had some very elite units in there. But I think Donald Kingslayer's done a pretty good job. I mean, if we look here, 13%. I don't know if that's going to be enough though. The High Elves have got a lot of elite units, and the Woodland Realms have got a lot of archers, a lot of good archers as well, so we'll see. We'll see if the numbers tell, or if the quality is going to be sufficient to deal with them. The Sindar Blade Masters, very much going to defeat a unit of heavy maulers, especially when they're backed up. But ultimately, the weight of numbers is what's going to finish them off here. Black Uruk Warband being brought in as well. What about over here? WK should probably advance on this unit of depleted Sylvan Silver Spears at this point. Orc Archers. Firing into the sides of these Silver Spears again. A low tier archer unit being used to very good effect by WK. Another very good player. Better than I. The Temple Inquisitors are also being committed. These Sylvan Heavy Swordsmen are going to defeat the Morgul Chosen and the Olag High, but now that the Temple Inquisitors are here, the tide of battle will turn somewhat. It's been a very interesting fight to behold so far, and there's still a long way to go. The Trolls of Gundabad are now being committed, so more and more Donald Kingslayer is sort of forcing more elite units to be committed against him, which of course means even if they survive, they're going to be weakened for the fight to come, and that can only help Glowbox and Horton in their final stand. The Elves, they're very at home defending. Maybe not quite as natural defenders as Dwarves are, but pretty darn close. As close as it gets anyway, and these Trolls of Gundabad being used to sort of squash what remains of that unit of Silver Spears. The Pikemen are now being committed as well. And now that they're being backed up, I mean the Pikes. The Sindar Blade Masters are good, but they're not this good. Of course, next patch they will be a Lothlorien only unit, which is good. I mean, I think they fit Lothlorien's philosophy a little bit more than they do Woodland Realms and High Elves. See, these Olag High have flanked around, and now WK has indeed engaged these Silver Spears, and the sheer weight of numbers of all these Uruks are starting to just push through. And when those Olag High recharge them, look at that. It's like ants going up a hill. And there they are. You can tell when they stop pushing because they start spreading out again. So yeah, Donald Kingslayer's defense is starting to peter out, unfortunately for him. Again, these Temple Inquisitors are in behind the line now, so things will very quickly start to go against them, although you don't really want to get friendly fire on Temple Inquisitors, if you can help it. Sindar Blade Masters and Sylvan Silver Spears trying their best. I mean, this is really all that's left. So having a look around, I mean, Gundabad are looking a bit worse for wear. I mean, they certainly don't have much in terms of numbers anymore, but they do still have a few key units like the Scourge Raiders. If they can get into melee in the late game against an armoured High Elven unit, they're the ideal support unit. The Blackguard, most tellingly, are still alive. I mean, in the late game they could be very key indeed. Guardians of Karndoom still in rude health. The Heavy Goblin Crossbows, presumably they still have ammunition. I mean, if the Woodland Realms don't skirmish them down, they could be what swings it in the late game. Crossbowmen often are. But the Misty Mountains and Gundabad are certainly not going to be bringing the numbers, at least not in a huge capacity anymore. WK's army, on the other hand, has still got quite a lot of Uruks. He's going to need to be the sponge, as it were, because that Woodland Realms and High Elven Archer force is going to be a nightmare to get through. And Donald Kingslayer ultimately has forced quite a bit of heavy attrition onto the Orcs. But again, I mean, the percentages are starting to close again, but then this is because the Lothlorien army is starting to fall completely. We shall see. I mean, the pikes are getting their killing done slowly, but now that the Uruk bodyguard and the Temple Inquisitors are here, and all of those Uruks in the background are starting to advance, as well as the Blackback Berserkers. It just goes to show how stubborn Elven spears are when they're in formation. Certainly not to be taken lightly. Even the silver spears, not quite as good as the heavy spearmen, but still pretty darn good. Oh, excuse me. I really hope this cold doesn't get much worse. A unit of 11 Uruk cowbirds. So I mean, this is the only engagement going on, so let's go and see what the final defence actually looks like. So over here we have Glowbox's position, and he has artillery as well, which is going to be... Again, artillery is very unpredictable. It can pay for itself in droves, or it can be a complete waste. I mean, in a scenario you get assigned your army, so it's not really as important in terms of cost there. He has his front line of pikes backed up by Dirith. This is a very nice formation indeed. The Dirith will provide the buffer, and the pikes will be able to get their poking done relatively free. And then the here Anak over here sort of guarding the flanks. So again, these positions, I mean, this valley over here is the Valley of Death. I mean, Lothlorien do have a few units still left over, or maybe this is the one unit, the Sindar Archers, where his general lies. And then up here, up on the hill, we have the Elder Royal Guard, and presumably this is where the council are as well. Yeah, so the elevated ground is being made use of by the Woodland Realms, and so this valley is where he has decided to make his stand. So if the Orcs have to try and advance through here, they're going to take incredible losses. And then over here, the final stand, as it were, is being done by the High Elves. So I think the High Elves will need to commit further forward if that valley is to hold, because otherwise the Orcs could just try and skirt around. I mean, presumably you can go through this part of the map, and you can just sort of circumvent the Valley of Death entirely by going this way. But again, we shall see. There are of course archers and Woodland Realms positions up on these twin peaks. But yes, this map is rather interesting to do on a free-for-all as well. There's a lot of opportunities for ambush. And again, one of the replays that I show in the near future might be another one on this map, but it will be sort of less in scope, but it will be a free-for-all. But it will be a little less cinematic, so maybe I'll hold off on that one. Certainly not going to follow up a large epic battle like this with that one. Over here we can see the final stand of this frontal position, the Elves being cut down like dogs. And then we should probably make a cut, to be honest, as the Orcs advance into position. But yeah, that's it. The victory belongs to the Orcs. So yeah, we will make a cut now as the Orcs sort of advance into position. And then we shall see how they deal with the Woodland Realms in that very dug-in valley position. So it would seem that not much time needed to pass, because they are already advancing on the Woodland Realms position. And it looks like the three armies that attacked the Lothlorien position are going to take them head on, which means even more attritional casualties will be had by them. But it does indeed look like Stewed Fungus is going to circumvent the situation entirely and try and go around. Of course, that has risks all of its own, because it means that the High Elves could double flank them, as it were. And now the Catapult is also firing. We shall see how they're advancing, and obviously WK is going to lead his way with his fodder in loose formation, and his archers, of course, that's to be expected. We've got more underground goblins over there. They really want to sort of negate the Woodland Realms skirmish advantage as much as possible, which is going to be tricky because you can't really get to the Woodland Realms skirmishes so easily. I mean, if you look at this defensive position, he's got this up on the hill over here, so he's got Hiri Beng firing over there. Underneath the trees over there, you can just about see the Elder Royal Guard poking through. Advancing through here is going to be very, very difficult. Again, I mean, I might be tempted just to... If I were sort of trying to coordinate the attackers, I would be tempted to try and circumvent the situation entirely by sort of going up around there. You know, taking this defence head on. I mean, for the sake of sportsmanship, I mean, going through this valley is obviously the thing to do. I mean, if someone takes the time to set up a very nasty defensive position like this, it's common courtesy to try and tackle it head on, particularly if you're playing as the Orcs. The Woodland Sentinels. I do like a bit of aggressive play as well. Unfortunately for Outfit, his Scourge Raiders are being the target of skirmish fire, which is a very good target. Of course, they're very weak to skirmish fire, and in melee they're not half bad. So, again, look at them fall, I mean. And dropping like flies, I mean, it's like the charge at the Battle of the Somme here. The Orcs have got men to spare, though. I mean, look at that big red blob on the map. And again, Stewed Fungus's army is relatively untouched. We shall see. There's like the odd unit of like 5 Orcs as well. There's the Gundabad Guard. Numenorian Shadow Guard, have they still got ammunition? I don't think they were being used. It's possible they were, actually. There were arrows flying all over the place. If we skim through the trees, we can see Orc fodder. Obviously not the target of arrow fire. Neither are the underground goblins. We'll see how this goes, though. The use of cavalry could be important to try and flank around the valley. And again, the Numenorian Shadow Guard are now finding themselves the target of arrow fire. And they themselves are not particularly great when they come under skirmish fire. Particularly not with the accuracy of the Elves. It is a brutal position to try and take. As the Orcs are finding, I mean, they're being repelled, being kept to arm's length at the moment. Perhaps I would have recommended forming up a little bit more before attacking, but that's just me. We look here, the percentages of kills, 10% difference at this point in the battle. With how fortified the Woodland Realms position is, it remains to be seen. The Woodland Realms are certainly going to extend that advantage a little bit more, but it really depends how long they can hold out, because the High Elves, they're not going to be able to withstand 4 armies. 2 perhaps, but not 4. If we look over here, you can see cavalry is on the move, I believe, and based on the green colour, I assume that is the Imladris cavalry, and indeed it is. Imladris cavalry, of course, is primarily shock-focused cavalry, similar to the Galadrim Mounted Company. Very fast, very deadly off a charge, very easy to move around, but not really the most durable. Archer fire is also pretty effective at dealing with these guys, provided it's concentrated. They don't have any sort of shield value. It's got to be careful of those Bolgs champions. I mean, Bolgs champions are going to be very effective at dealing with them. Is Horton going to see this, I wonder? Doesn't look like he is. I mean, Imladris cavalry can very easily outrun wolves. But I thought he was going to... Yep, here we go. Oof. The loss of this cavalry might be pretty key as well, because it could have been very useful at disrupting the enemy advance into the valley. Now it's running away, but not before it's taken some pretty considerable losses from a rear charge. A direct rear charge at that. Meanwhile, the advance has begun. Outfit has committed Guardians of Khan Doom, and he needs to... Well, they need to commit a few more units here. All of these depleted units, they're all exhausted after trying to deal with that Lothlorien position. And they are not going to be able to break through a Dirith and Avari Elder Pikeman line without significant support. There's the Scourge Raiders after the beating they took at the hands of the archers. My word. Oof, wait a minute. I cut away at just the wrong time there. The catapult has got a pretty point-blank shot. Can scarcely... Oh my word, look at that.
They have lost half their men.
The Mountain Uruk pikes being targeted. Another very good target. Again, Glowbox knows exactly what he's doing. The Hiri Bang. They can't really see their targets, but then again, the Elves are dead eyes, shooting a lot of their arrows into the floor there. But again, microing on a map like this where you can't really see when you're sort of zoomed out and trying to macro your army is hard. Hiri Bang. I mean, the tree coverage works for and against you in all situations. Over here we can see Hiri Lang. They're sort of guarding this sort of way up onto the hill. And Lang are a very effective unit. Woodland Sentinels still have their bows out, as do the Elder Royal Council. The Elder Royal Council looks so cool. Another one of my favourite units in the game at the moment. How will this go? If we look up here, is this a collection of the wargs? Where are we? There's a unit of Orc Raiders. Why? There's a unit of 5 Orc Raiders just randomly running around out here. Imladris Cavalry. Meanwhile, the Elder Enway Archers are firing at what exactly? I believe it will be Medge's wargs. What on earth was that? Well, whatever it was, it is now very dead. How strange. But yes, indeed, we can see that the Hirty Bang firing, that's a very nice position. In fact, I'm going to try and get a screenshot of that. That was a bit of a glitch from the trees there. There we go. And it didn't crash, how about that? No more screenshots there. I really don't want to have to try and refine this position in the battle. They take so long. Uruks are also being committed to the Hir and Ek. Getting through this position is going to be very, very tricky, but if we look over this hill, let's scoot on over, we can see, oh, and there's lesser Balrogs. And Melkor's chosen. Stewed Fungus's army is menacing this position, and they're going to sort of attack up this flank as well. Again, you can sort of make your way up these hills, and over here we can see that these Lang, victory does seem certain, but they are going to be surrounded, and ultimately attrition is going to play a big part in how the Woodland Realms are dealt with, because of course they do have armour, but it isn't their main focus. And now Olag High are being committed as well. Going to be a very sticky situation for them. There's Elder Royal Council have now been recommitted. Is that, well, the Elder Royal Council have been recommitted to sort of face Stewed Fungus, and again, the Temple Inquisitors have been the main focus of the Hour of Fire over here, it looks like, because they have taken losses, and again, that's the ideal target for the Woodland Realms archers to go for, because they are so deadly. But you can now see, based on the minimap, that the red is starting to completely encircle Glowbox's position. Again, there is a case for saying that maybe they should have held off on the frontal assault until they were ready, because they have taken a lot of losses. They will have taken a lot of losses from the front. Again, Orc Halberdiers are not going to be sufficient to deal with this. Black Uruk Warband, I mean, the Avari Pikes have not really taken a huge amount of losses. The catapult is trying to fire at point blank, it seems. Gundabad still have those witches somewhere. Again, I may miss whenever they fire, because it's difficult to keep track of absolutely everything. But I doubt they will have fired yet. I mean, the witches are just the ideal unit to save for the late game. They can basically win you the battle, particularly when it turns into a grind fest against the High Elves. And over here we can see that the Hir and Ek, victory is still a certainty because they are just fighting standard Uruks, but they are starting to take a few attritional losses. So the hit points for them are largely gone. More Uruks being committed, heavy maulers as well. The archers have largely turned around to try and face Stewed Fungus's army, which again is understandable because his army was completely healthy. The Elder Royal Guard look like they're out of ammo. They've pulled out their axes, and in melee they are a real force to be reckoned with. Armour piercing on those axes, of course. And oh, there's Elder Palace Guard in here as well. 63 man. They are going to be a nightmare to finish off unless you have enough men to overwhelm them. But of course, Glowbox is they're fighting back to back, really, sort of in two lines. Got those lesser Balrogs. Going to be ideal to sort of smash through the High Elven lines in the late game if they're still alive. And then up here we can see the Elder Royal Council being engaged in melee with Olag High. So again, the Orcs of Mordor back here of Stewed Fungus managed to smash through the lines somewhat. There's Olag High. The Balrogs are just sort of menacingly standing here, which again is understandable. The Morgul Chosen are here. And you can see now that, oh, there's another unit of Balrogs. So he's got 2 units of lesser Balrogs. My word. But yes, now the Orcs are starting to sort of overwhelm and overrun Glowbox's position. And again, if it was a rule that the High Elves have to stay in that final defensive position, it's understandable. But if not, I would question why the High Elves have not come to the Woodland Realms' aid. Because they could have easily sort of committed their forces to sort of really deal with Stewed Fungus's army. Because the frontal 3 armies weren't going anywhere. And now we can see the catapult is being savaged by these trolls of Gundabad. The Mithlon, well, the Forest Bladesmen, probably not going to be sufficient to deal with them quickly enough to save it. Here at Bang that are out of ammo again. Now that the archer ammunition is starting to run a little dry, the positions are starting to fall, and the Mountain Uruk Pikes again. At this point, I would place the advantage of the battle in favour of the Orcs. I think they just have too much in the way of numbers anyway. for the High Elves to deal with in the late game. I mean, the Woodland Realms have done their best, but ultimately they couldn't hold every avenue. They were able to be surrounded. And while over there we can see that the Imladris cavalry doing its best to sort of charge into the Orcs, and they have sort of stabilised this part of the line, dealing with a lot of those Uruks. More trees.
Our ally lies dead. Without their general,
And there goes Thranduil at the hands of an Olag High. I'm sorry I missed that, that's quite cinematic. The mighty elf felled by a foul troll. Meanwhile, here we are. So this was where the Elder Royal Council were fighting. We can see that the Olag High are still doing relatively okay, although they are getting friendly fire. I mean, if that's from the Temple Guard, they won't last much longer. What do we have down here? Yes, indeed, it is from the Temple Guard. The finest archers Mordor can muster, and the Númenórean Shadow Guard, of course. The Temple Guard, I've noticed, at range are not quite as good as you would expect them to be, but they are still very, very good. I mean, the Orc factions don't usually have the luxury of having a fantastic archer line, but Mordor can field a pretty good one. I mean, the Temple Guard leading a line of Morannon bows can be very, very effective in the current patch. Meanwhile, if we look down here, I mean, the Balrogs, backed up by these spears, and these Sauron's will. I mean, it's hard to really sort of see through the tree line as a macro, from a macro perspective, but the line is falling apart for Glowbox. Again, it remains to be seen. He managed to loose a lot of arrows. We shall see if he managed to target the right things, or if he was able to target the right things in the late game. I mean, they still have the advantage by 13%. I'm not sure that's going to be enough, though. I mean, the Witches are still lurking somewhere. What do we have over here? We have Woodland Sentinels. Victory is a distinct possibility against Blackwatch Legion. Are you sure? That's surprising. There's these Mountain Uruk Blades. I mean, eventually they're going to lose, of course, because they're just going to be surrounded. We've got those here at Elang trying to reposition themselves. Oh, excuse me. Oh, they're going to surround, actually. Get a rear charge on those Blackwatch Legion. The Blackwatch Legion will be a very useful tool in the late game for a similar reason as the Balrogs will be, just forcing your way through the lines. Of course, less from a shock perspective and more just a slow pushing back. Again, they would certainly not be out of place in the Dwarves lineup based on philosophy alone. These Hiri Bang, they're doing their best. Victory does seem certain, interestingly enough. Although I can't imagine that will remain the case for much longer with these Trolls, these Balrogs, all of these Pikes around. The Forest Bladesmen are a bit too lightweight to deal with all of the Orcs that are arrayed against them. What's going on back here? The Imladris Cavalry is still running around. The Elder Palace Guard is falling back, as are some of the Elder Royal Guard, so both Donald Kingslayer and Glowbox have managed to pull back some pretty important units. These Temple Guard are firing at point blank. I'm not sure what they were doing, but they are going to be absolutely ripped apart by the High Elves archers. I mean, the Norotina warriors less so, but they're... oof. It's a bit of a waste of the Temple Guard, I've got to say. They could have been very useful in the late game, and they've been thrown away somewhat. I don't know if that was a misclick or what, but if they just sort of auto-targeted a unit and then followed them back, I'm not sure. But yes, ultimately this is the victory for the second phase of the battle for the Orcs. Again, I think this one went pretty well for them. I think that Stewed Fungus did the right thing by sort of flanking around, and ultimately Glowbox, with what he had, was not able to sort of paper over all of the cracks in the defence. But it remains to be seen whether or not he was able to inflict enough casualties. This all stacks after all. Pulled it back to 12%, the Orcs. Make that 11. I hear chanting. Is that the Blackback Berserkers? Yes, it is. They're going to be another important unit in the late game. I mean, they're ripping through this unit of spears. Being backed up by Sauron's Will, another unit that chants. Another unit based entirely around its offensive capabilities. I wouldn't recommend that Stewed Fungus advance on the High Elf position just yet. They need to group up and then force their way through with sheer force. I would like to see the Elves win this now, just because the odds are somewhat against them at this point, I would say. As it often is for the defenders. these Hiraneka routing. You need to go some to rout a unit of elves, so the chanting did pay off in the end. Defeat seems certain. Even the finest of elves is no match for sheer force on such a scale. Let us see what is happening. It does look like the orcs are actually going to advance. Again, this cavalry is still running around, but Imladris cavalry, there's only 11 of them left, and they aren't going to be robust enough. Over here we see Moranon halberds from Stewed Fungus getting into the front lines of Elder Enway's Spear. They need to be backed up very quickly, or they will get ripped apart by Imladris guards. It does look like they will be, with Moranon Uruks and more Uruk halberds. So again, they are just engaging the line, probing, but if they're going to engage, they need to commit more. I mean, Glowbox's position over here is still technically alive with individual pockets of resistance, but not to the extent that it matters, really, to be brutally honest. I mean, especially now that they're being engaged by Black Berserkers. Morgul Chosen still in the background again. The Forces of Evil still have a lot of elite units left. There are the Witchround Blackguard, and here's the unit that could be the killer. The Witchers. I do love the unit model for the Witchers. They look like an even more sinister version of the Nazgul. Yeah, this is it. This is the end, as it were. What's going on over here? There's still battle sounds. Blackwatch Legion fighting against what's left of the Woodland Sentinels. There was a unit of Hiri Lang that was flanking around as well. They still in effect? Well, the Woodland Realms have been thoroughly beaten on this hill now, finally. So all that really remains is Horton and what Glowbox and Donald Kingslayer were able to save in this final position. Again, it's going to be a very brutal position to take. I mean, the High Elves have got an elite army full of very defensive units. I'm not sure it's going to be enough. The weight of numbers might be enough for the Orcs to just plough through. The Trolls of Gundabad are on their way. Trolls are the ideal thing to disrupt a pipeline. I think a lot of people think that pikes are good against trolls, and they aren't. Pikes are... To beat pikes, you need to disrupt their formation. And to do that, there are several things that you can do, and trolls are one of the ideal things to do that with. However, in this situation, because of the addition of the spearmen adding that mass, the trolls are not going to be able to make it to the pikes, and so the pikes are just going to be able to poke them from a distance, and the trolls are ultimately going to die. The spear's position may be a little bit crumpled by this, though. Maybe the Uruks can make use of that. We shall see. Quick screenshot. Again, I lied. I'm too tempted. Too much of the time. Again, over here there's another defensive position of Imladris guards and spearmen, but I'm not sure that engaging them on this front would be a wise idea until they have all of their forces over here, as they pull through the valley with what they have left. All four of the Orc armies still have something, and they all have something relatively elite as well. Trying to sort of skirmish down this position, the Imladris guards the ideal target for skirmish fire. They're going to need to try and sort of skirmish them down as much as possible, because taking them front on, the Imladris guards can cause havoc to Uruks before, as I have noticed. I've had them plough through 4 entire units of standard Uruks with only about half losses before. Again, looks like we've got some Morgul Chosen heading into the breach as well. Slightly more robust unit. They're going to at least make sure that this line doesn't break, which is important. And we also have Olag High coming in from various sources. Let's try and zoom in. The lag has been very kind to me, I must say. You can see these Olag High are sort of trying to get in there. Most of the trolls for the Forces of Evil are bloodied now there. But I can see this line lasting for quite a long time, and Ladris Guards and Elder Enway Spearmen are the ideal partners for one another. I mean, there is a bit of a break here, so maybe they should be thinking about committing a unit maybe of archers if they're out of ammunition, just to sort of paper over the cracks, or get ready to at least, because I mean there's Witchround Blackguard on the way. If we see the advancing armies of evil passing through, well, you can't really see them under the trees, but if we see the Witchround Blackguard, definitely a very effective unit. The Sauron's Will are chanting away, Moran on bows firing into the enemy positions. what's left of the Gundabad forces, the Witchers. Oh no, no, please say it isn't so. The Witchers are being targeted by archers. It's going to be too late. They're going to die under high elven archer fire. This is why you should always leave them at the back. This is the problem with the Witchers. They're so easily focused down by archers because they're tough individually, but individually there's only 11 of them. So it'll be a real tragedy if we don't get to see the fireballs, but I mean, there are 2 of them left alive, to be fair. But I think they're all going to die. Yep, that's it. The only one left alive is the officer, and he cannot use the fire. What a shame. What a shame indeed. Although, to be fair, the orcs are really making a push over here. The Imladris guards are here, but I mean, there's also that unit of Elder Enway swordsmen that's been committed. Trying their best to hold the line, but the orcs are sort of focusing in on this one avenue of attack. And again, the elves have to sort of defend these other areas. Again, there's a pathway around here that the Falas Lords are watching. And there's that other one that the Elder Enway Spearmen and Imladris guards are watching as well. And they have to do that because otherwise the orcs will simply flank around. But this also does mean that they have to leave one front sort of relatively ill-equipped to deal with the full might of the orcs. And this is the problem that Horton finds himself in. I mean, he will be the one that is being dictated to because the orcs have all the power in this situation. If your back is up against the wall, you have no choice. The Elder Palace Guard are here, so this line will hold for the time being. I mean, the Olakai will fall. But again, it's all a matter of attrition, and the elves can afford less attrition than the orcs can. And as we can see, I mean, 12%? I'm not sure, I mean, I can see the elves falling off the cliff more quickly than the orcs. What is this down here? What have we here? Melkor's Chosen. They could force their way through Falas Lords in a hurry, off a charge. We'll see if Stewed Fungus does
Only half
this.
the enemy force remains.
Indeed, what force is that, I wonder? Oh, excuse me. I can only apologise for my cold. The Elder Royal Guard are also here, so Glowbox is basically committing all he has left to reinforce Horton's front line over here. The Olakai are starting to fall, but it is, you know, they have managed to force their way at least through the Elder Enway spears that were at the front. The continuing skirmish fire comes down. I mean, at least they won't have to deal with the Witchers anymore. That's a very important target they've taken out. It means at least that in the late game they won't be squashed beneath a flurry of fireballs. There goes another Olag High. Revenge for Thranduil. Ooh, pikes. Mountain Uruk pikes from Medj coming forward. Very good addition now that the Imladris guards are largely dealt with. Some orc pikes might be just the thing to help force the elven position back a little bit. We shall see. There's Sauron's Will in the background over there as well. I'm not sure that the High Elves have got too much in the way of ammunition left. Elder Enway Archers. Elder Enway Swordsmen. Where are the Noldors? Are they still hiding? They are indeed. Which leads me... Yep, they still have their bows out. So the High Elves do still have an archer option, but again, it's only one unit. As good as the Noldor Elders are, under this sort of pressure, I'm not sure. Blackback Berserkers coming forward as well, so the Orcs are definitely focusing on this one front. Not a bad idea in the situation. In these sorts of scenarios, the Orcs often... It's often a snowball effect. I mean, if you don't get enough kills in the early game as the defenders, you can often find yourself completely outnumbered in the late game, and that's looking like what's going to happen here. I mean, it's not impossible that the defenders can win this, and there's still a long way to go in this battle. Still 15,000 frames. I'm not sure. I'm not sure they have enough left in the reserve. I mean, there's Norritino warriors. These guys are not going to be enough, I fear. It remains to be seen. There's still some underground goblins alive. It would be a true miracle if we had underground goblins alive at the end. Elder Palace Guard and Elder Royal Guard. The Elder Palace Guard have got very unique weapons, sort of I wouldn't call them twin blades, they're more glaives, I guess. Double-sided glaives. Very unique type of weapon. Brutally effective infantry. Again, in terms of taking archer fire though, maybe not the best. It is really the best way to deal with them, and they are going to be taking sort of stray arrow fire every now and then. These Falas Lords are going to have to brace themselves. Looks like the Orcs are going to open up another front, leading the way with these Uruk halberds. It's not a bad idea, because this front over here, the Falas Lords, they're very tough, but they're not particularly fast at getting their killing done. They are essentially, in terms of armour at least, dismounted Elder Enway nobles. Falas Lords are one of those units that is... I find them quite underwhelming, to be honest. I mean, they look very cool, of course, and they will hold the line all day long, but ultimately they don't kill an awful lot, and this is true of a lot of spears, but particularly these guys. Considering how expensive they are, they can be overwhelmed all too easily, in my opinion. You can see Moran on bows. Presumably they're out of ammunition, sort of coming forwards to just reinforce the line. Again, the Noratino warriors have been committed, trying to just add a bit more weight to the line, and they are needed because you can see that they make up quite a lot of the numbers of this front line now. The Mountain Uruk pikes are here. Defeat does seem certain for the Orcs, but they've done their job. I mean, the Imladris guards are nowhere to be seen. Actually, no, they are over here still. In small numbers anyway, 23 of them still remain. What have we over here? We have a unit of... we have a blue triangle. Can't fool me. Where are you? Well, I can't find them. I assume it's Glowbox's Lang that he flanked around, or it's just like one stray unit that's routing. Routing for all eternity. Smiths of Eregion back here, Storm Guard. Sindar archers pursuing... what's this? Units of Uruks that WK managed to sneak through the lines. I must have missed that. Horton did warn me actually in this replay to be on the lookout for something WK did. I wonder if I completely missed it. Those Uruks somehow managed to get into the Elven defence. Yes, and over here we can see another Orc advance. The Falas Lords will be able to hold against Uruk halberds, of course, but just the fact that they're being pressured from another front is going to be significant. What are they doing? Why are they walking away? Well, he's going to send in his Moran on Uruks first. Understandable, I guess. All he needs to do is engage these units, to be fair. In the late game, life as an attacker is either relatively easy or crushingly difficult. And here I would say the onus is all on the Elves to pull something out of the bag here. I mean, it says that the percentages are widening, but I can't help but feel that the Orcs just have those elite units lurking in the background. We'll see. Maybe the attrition will start to turn around and start to adversely affect the Orcs instead. It is possible. Noratino warriors, we can see that Smiths of Eregion are being committed forwards. So again, I guess Smiths of Eregion are not necessarily the best thing to send in against Blackback Berserkers. Blackback Berserkers are all attack, no armour. And they will deal a tremendous amount of damage to units like the Smiths, provided they aren't already dead. Again, you can see these Falas Lords taking a few attritional losses already. The Smiths would be... the Smiths are taking arrow fire, potentially? Well, the Smiths definitely need to be committed over here. Oh, and there's Blackguard. Yeah, no wonder the Falas Lords are going to start to struggle. I mean, there's Blackguard, Morgul Chosen. The Blackguard are, of course, armour piercing. One of the few sword and shield units in the game to be armour piercing. Definitely a very effective unit. Very cool looking as well. And yes, indeed, the Smiths of Eregion are being committed over here, which should stabilise this line. Defeat is almost a certainty, however, for the Falas Lords. So they're going to need to get into the action pretty quickly. Backed up by those Moran on Uruks and those Uruk halberds. Oh, and Numenorian Shield Guard. Those Elder Enway archers still have ammunition? They do, they still have their bows out. Well, the time is now. Oh yeah, the time, they need to hurry up. They need to charge. Very effective use of mass. Only one unit was over here covering this front, and now they've buckled the line completely. So this unit of Falas Lords is going to be ripped asunder now that it's out of formation and there's Blackguard present. The Smiths of Eregion have charged in, but unfortunately they didn't have the luxury of sort of forming up a nice, neat defensive line. The Elves are going to try and shoot into this block, but the damage may already be done. And WK is also doing this. Stewed Fungus and WK combining their forces. Uruk Bodyguard, another pretty decent unit. I'm always a fan of doing a mass push. There is a time and a place for it. If you do it too early, you're just going to take too many casualties, but that was the perfect use of it right there. And now the High Elves are very much on the back foot. Defeat is almost a certainty for Smiths of Eregion. You know it's bad when you see that. What a tragedy. Over here, this line is holding up much more effectively. The presence of the Elder Palace Guard certainly isn't hurting that any. They've only taken about 20 losses since the start of the battle. They will take a few more to the Blackback Berserkers, but not too many. You can see another unit of heavy golden infantry. Again, it's just a matter of keeping these guys occupied at this point, because now this front over here is where the damage will be done. Again, if they're going to be insistent on, now that they've committed Smiths and Archers to this line, they need to commit more. Otherwise it's going to be a complete waste. And now we can see 13%, the battle is starting to turn around. This is where the cliff starts approaching for the Elves. I mean, the Noldor Elders need to be sort of put into a position where they can use their ammunition at this point. I mean, there's no point in holding this position back here with these units. Just the time has come to commit them. And now over here we can see that another front is potentially going to be opened up with the Blackwatch Legion. Again, just engaging these Imladris guards in particular, this pike unit, so that it can't change its position, is all they need to do. I mean, even if they just hover back here, they know that they can't. They might be able to move these Mithlon nobles, but just making sure that they can't move these Imladris guards is going to be key. Backs to the walls for the defenders, indeed. And the Smiths of Eregion have stopped dropping like flies quite so much, but that was a brutally effective push. These Eldarenway archers, I mean, they're going to do their best in melee, but against this many Orc elite units, they are quite doomed. And the Falas Lords were, again, you know, they were crushed really underfoot. They're good at holding the line, but not against that much mass.
Good tidings. The enemy general lies dead.
Well, there goes the Gundabad general. I mean, I don't think that's going to be sufficient to break the Gundabad units, though. I mean, WK is sort of flanking his Orc bodyguard around, and he's going to... Well, the Elder Palace Guard and the Elder Royal Guard are over here. That must mean that this line over here... Eldarenway Swordsmen have been committed, but so have Balrogs, so... the damage is going to be done, I fear. Balrogs backed up by Blackback Berserkers and Uruks. Let's see what the percentages are starting to look like. Well, the Elves are holding. I mean, at this point, when you get into the final 10% of attackers, it's starting to look pretty ropey. Can the Elves pull it off? There's Orc bodyguards from the Misty Mountains still to come. More Uruks, Blackwatch Legion. They have actually retreated from over here, though, so that means that the Imladris guards are largely free to turn around, as are these Mithlon nobles. Yeah, at this point... The Blackback Berserkers are starting to push back. Again, the addition of the Woodland Realms units over here will stabilise this front. Although the Blackguard, their damage will still be pretty extreme. These Eldarenway archers do still have ammunition, but I don't think they have a good firing line. So they are currently holding their fire. The Uruk bodyguard is flanked around and is sort of attacking the Palace Guard and the Royal Guard, sort of preventing them from really getting into the main bulk of the force. So good work there from WK. Sindar archers are being committed. Pretty good unit in melee as well. Blackwatch Legion here. The Balrogs have started to fall. So it might be that the damage caused by the Woodland Realms and Lothlorien was critical in the end. Those Eldarenway archers are sort of holding position. Those Imladris guards are falling back. The Noldor Elders that still have ammunition. Yeah, the Elves might just pull this off. Noratirno warriors. Well, the Lothlorien warriors are not going to pull off a melee fight against the Blackback Berserkers, but yeah, this front has started to collapse for the Orcs. At least they don't seem too keen on advancing through it anymore. And there, yes indeed, the unit of Lang that the Woodland Realms held back in reserve has now revealed itself. Very sneakily done by Glowbox. So the question is, will he charge into the Orc bodyguards? I mean, they probably do a number on the Orc bodyguards. And the potential of killing the Misty Mountains general, it might be too juicy a target to pass up. Uruks, and over here the Eldarenway archers have launched an attack, so an aggressive play, I like it. Again, Uruks against Eldarenway archers. Numenorean Shadow Guard firing. I wonder when those Lang are gonna commit themselves. But yeah, I'd say things are looking pretty grim for the Orcs all of a sudden. The attritional casualties they've taken, they might just be too much. I mean, it's going to be very close. Just because the defenders are going to start to lose men in the late game. And Mladris guards, they have fallen back. This final position will be very difficult to take. The Blackguard defeat seems certain. It's looking like the Palace Guard have taken more losses, but again, there's still 32 of them. They're so strong. Victory's starting to seem certain, so while they were able to push through here, the Orcs are starting to pay for it now. My. I mean, at this point, I would be tempted to flank around more units of Eldarenway. There's Eldarenway archers out here, but I would be tempted to attack outwards with the spears as well. Deal with these Uruks. And then maybe come... Oh dear. Unfortunately, the Lang were not really given the chance.
Our men have slain the enemy general.
I mean, they did manage to slay the Mordor general. Doing pretty well against the Melkor's Chosen in melee. And the Melkor's Chosen did get a charge off on them, and they went from 110 down to 55 very, very quickly. And now the Orc bodyguard will be great enough in number to finish them off. But even so, it's another unit that they're going to have to deal with. Maybe not as... It was a good idea, but I think the Melkor's Chosen were able to sort of diffuse the catastrophe that could have been. And those Eldarenway archers being a real thorn in the side. That, I believe, is WK's general. Because it was up here, and that was where his Uruk bodyguard were. And now these Elder Royal Guard. What are they doing? They're going to chase down the Uruk bodyguard, finish it off. Indeed they are. Over here, I mean, I would be tempted at this point to just try and sally out as the Elves and try and crush them. Take the offensive stance. Use your Noldor Elders, particularly if you focus fire on something that's weak to arrows, like the Blackback Berserkers. These Mithlond nobles have been committed to help hold this line. The Blackwatch Legion are a very effective bulldozer, but they're not going to be...
The battle is very much in our favour. Victory will be ours.
Yes, indeed. I think victory will be the Elves. I was thinking that after the fall of this valley position from the Woodland Realms that they would be in deep trouble, but ultimately the quality of the Elven troops shone through, and in the end I underestimated how much attritional losses they really took to Lothlorien and the Woodland Realms on their advance to the final position. The Orc bodyguard is taking a few losses to the Hiri Lang as well. Ultimately, all this attrition was what killed the Orcs off. My. The Shadow Guard are out of ammunition. These archers are now falling by the wayside, but not before they've done some more damage to those Uruks. And if we look back here in this final position, there's no way the Orcs can make it through Mladris Guards and Smiths. There's another unit of Falas Lords. There's the Storm Raiders and the Noldor Elders as well. So this is pretty much all she wrote. This is now clean-up for the Elves. So there you go. The Elves win. Defenders win. The good guys win. It's not often. The Orcs made to go home in shame. And finally, the tide of Orc victories on Horton's scenarios has been halted. I don't think I've done a victory for the good factions since the Osgiliath siege, the really big one with 20,000 Orcs that lagged horribly. Even so, I mean, this is impressive. Just goes to show that the Elves, particularly the Woodland Realms, I mean the Elder Palace Guard, they still have 28 man left, and they've been in the combat for so long. Again, Stewed Fungus is sort of getting in another unit of heavy maulers, doing his best to try and open up another front. I mean, if they can flank around and get into the rear of the Elven lines, it's not over yet. It's just mostly over. I mean, I still can't see them, even if they break through, getting through the Smiths and the Imladris Guards and the Nolder Elders. The Nolder Elders may as well just empty their ammunition into the Orc ranks at this point. Really make them pay. Let's go back here. See what the Lang are doing. Well, the Lang are actually... Victory seems certain. Victory is also a distinct possibility for the Orc Bodyguard, but the Orc Bodyguard are really being made to pay, and if the Misty Mountains lose their general, that's just another target for the Elves that they have managed to achieve. You can see that these Uruks have managed to be victorious. There's heavy goblin crossbows. The crossbows, do they still have ammunition? Yes, they do. They're going to need to use their ammunition extremely wisely, lest the Orcs be humiliated. The underground goblins have been committed, sending forward the big guns now. Sindar archers. I mean, the Sindar archers, I believe, are intended to be the general's unit, but I don't know. I've always preferred the Galadrim veterans personally. These heavy maulers' defeat still seems certain. I mean, there's no way. These Elder Palace Guard are simply too great in quality. Oh my word! You see that guy? He did a triple somersault in like 2 seconds. Being butchered by that glaive.
Our foolish general has thrown his life away.
That.
Our chances of victory with it.
Oh my! That was the High Elven general. WK. So this is what he was talking about. The Temple Inquisitors and the Sauron's Will have flanked around and are engaging the Nolder Elders and the Storm Raiders in melee. What a twist! I mean, it's not really going to matter for the Elven morale if the general dies, but even so. I mean, I still think it's a little bit too late for the Orcs, but that was a... I mean, if they'd have known that there was a way around here... I mean, even I didn't know this, to be fair. I mean, it's very well covered by trees. Perhaps their plan of attack would have changed somewhat, because this was definitely winnable for both sides. Again, it might turn out that the Orcs' reckless assaults on the valley and on this final position when they weren't all formed up might have been what killed them. And indeed, the Sauron's Will is going to fall by the wayside pretty quickly. The Temple Inquisitors, even with how good they are, against Nolder Elders, Storm Raiders... Is that Storm Guard, or is that just the... No, that's just the Nolder Elders and the Smiths, though. It's going to be too much pressure for them to bear, but at least they did flank around. And at least they did kill the High Elven General. Poor Elrond. He's not going to live to see victory. Over here we see the Eldarenway Archers. Morannon Maulers. It's really clean up for the Elves on the front line at this point. Let's see how the Orc Bodyguard is doing. Well, they are going to have victory over here. But it was at quite a hefty cost. I mean, they are now basically at half strength. Routing Uruk halberds all over the place. Where'd those crossbows go? There's still a healthy unit of swordsmen and spearmen, so... WK curses the Elves in his last breath, but I don't think it's going to be enough. I mean, over here they might break through again, but the Elves have just got too many units left. The Elder Palace Guard still haven't dropped below 20. I shudder to think how many kills they have got. I'm not sure if I'll be able to see that or not. We'll see. I hope I get to see all the kills of all the Elven factions, because of course this was sent to me by Horton, so I will get to see his kills at the very least, but I hope I get to see all of the Elven factions' kills. And over here, the brave stand of the Temple Inquisitors is going to be cut short. The Storm Raiders, in the next patch, based on what I know, they might well be my favourite unit, simply because I've always liked the way they look and their weaponry. And now they have the purpose, the effectiveness to back that up, because in this patch they're a little bit naff, really, for what they offer. I mean, there's no reason not to use the Eldarenway Swordsman over them, if you're paying for your army, that is. And yes, over here, the Eldarenway Spearmen have indeed flanked around. and they are dealing with the crossbows, one of the few hopes of the orcs, being butchered by one of the OG units. Spears get their killing done very slowly, but the Elder Runway Spearmen, they scarcely get better. I prefer the look of the Elder Runway Spears to the Falas Lords, personally. That's the Orc Bodyguard. Am I missing something? Did they charge in? Are they on the front line? Yes, they are. So the Orc Bodyguard are here. They are going to break through here, though, the Orcs. The Blackback Berserkers carrying the day, along with the Underground Goblins. Still alive. Still here in the late game. What heroes. So the Orcs have sort of threatened to break through, but ultimately the Elves ration themselves very well, I think. And over here, WK's flanking manoeuvre, while bold, and while it did manage to assassinate Elrond, is ultimately not going to be enough. We're into the final 2,000 frames, and I fear that the Orcs are not going to be able to kill 14% of the Elven army. And over here we can see the flank. Elder Enway Spearmen charging into the rear of these Orc bodyguards that have already taken a bit of a beating from those Hiri Lang. This was a fun one, actually. Very well balanced as well, because I get the feeling that this battle could go very differently depending on how the defenders and how the attackers choose to approach it. This is a very interesting map in the sense that there's a lot of hidden ways, as WK showed with that sort of flanking manoeuvre. There's also a lot of hidden positions that you can take up. It's definitely a good map for the Elves to use, as you would expect from Mirkwood. The Realm of Mirkwood, I believe this map is called. This was a very fun one to watch. We're in the final stretch here. The Blackback Berserkers did very well. Again, I think of all the attacking armies, it's hard to say. I think WK deserves a special mention for the things he did. He managed to deal with the threat of that that Woodland Realms cavalry early on quite well. Medj did very well as well, I have to say. Gundabad, they did what they could. I mean, they were maybe a little bit overzealous in the early game, committing all their elites against Lothlorien, but of course they did end up crushing Lothlorien underfoot as a result of that, but maybe the attrition was a bit too much, and it's starting to tell here in the late game because they didn't really have an answer for the Elven elites. I don't know. It's definitely a battle of many chapters. I was thinking the Orcs were going to win after they managed to get through Glowbox's position, but ultimately I think that they were a bit overzealous in attacking the Elven lines. There you go. In the background over here we can see the Elder Palace Guard in all their victorious glory. Some of them aren't even bloody. Actually no, maybe they are all bloody. Nope, some of them aren't. Well, there you go. The Imladris Storm Guard also being committed. Again, another very stylish unit. I wonder if when Linden get added, if the High Elves will be renamed to Imladris. Would make a good deal of sense. And then we would have the big four Elven factions. With Linden having a bit more of a pike focus, I can't help but feel like they might be my favourite Elven faction when all is said and done, but we shall see. The Noldor Elders are also being committed. Again, I think everyone has a soft spot for Imladris simply because they have a high tier option in every sort of category. There's nothing they can't do. You do have to pay for it though. These Orc bodyguards, all on their lonesome, are the ones making the final stand. Sandwich between Sindar archers, Elder Enway spearmen, Elder Enway swordsmen, and now Noldor Elders are on the scene. There's still those Imladris guards in the background though.
Cowardly foe runs. It's time to press the attack.
Still 9 of those initial Imladris guards. Those Orc bodyguards. Only 22 of them remaining. And this is the final stand. There goes the Misty Mountains General finally. And that will be the end. The end of days. So finally, the Elves collectively managed to stop the rot. Horton of course runs a little campaign of all his scenarios. And so finally the tide of evil has been stemmed somewhat, shall we say. And unsurprisingly it's the Elves who have done it. Everyone likes playing as the Elves when they get to be defensive, I think. It's a very cathartic experience to mow down Orcs by the dozen.
Pursue and run them down.
Pursue. No need to pursue. There's not really much left to pursue. Very well done indeed. That was a fun one. Player has admitted defeat. And so that's going to be it. Let's see the final stats. I mean, someone hasn't admitted defeat yet. Is there still fighting going on up here? No, there is. There's still some Sauron's Will. WK, the last man standing with his Sauron's Will. They're going to be cut down by Storm Raiders and Falas Lords any moment now. The combined forces of Imladris, Lothlorien, and the Woodland Realm have victory over the Orc Horde. 4 elite armies as opposed to 5 garbage armies. And look at those kills for the Woodland Realms. Again, not surprising that the High Elves got the least amount of kills, as it were, because of course they were right at the very back and they had the most remaining at the end with 950. So going through here, I imagine that the 1,300 kills was probably Stewed Fungus, simply because he managed to flank around on the Woodland Realms and get quite a lot of kills off them. But again, I do think that WK, despite probably getting the lowest amount of kills, I imagine this was him because he has the most men deployed. I think that what he did with what he had was probably the most impressive of what the attackers did. Medj did a pretty good job as well. Gundabad got a lot of kills but lost a lot of his elites early. Now let's see. Do we get to see? No, it's just the High Elves, unfortunately, we get to see. But I can imagine that the King's Guard got a lot of... The King's Guard, the Palace Guard probably got close to 1,000 each. And Lothlorien got a decent amount as well, I can imagine. That unit of Elder Runaway Swordsmen getting 454. That's very good for a unit of two-handers that tend to die kind of easily. Unit of Imladris Guards only got 4, but then they were held in reserve a lot. 305 was the one that was in battle. And yeah, so his MVPs essentially were a unit of Elder Runaway Swordsmen, so very effective units. Very effective indeed. But yes, that was another Haunt scenario. A very fun one to watch indeed as well. So yep, I hope you enjoyed this one, because I certainly did, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next.